been building businesses for 9 years now. And ultimately, the biggest thing that surprised me the most and the biggest challenge that I didn't think was going to be this big of a challenge was hiring. So I used to work for someone for 5 years, and I just thought he kept making these weird hires. And I was like, bro, it's so easy. You just, I don't know, you post. There are some people that are obviously going to be a shitty fit with your business, a bad fit with your business. And then you just don't hire that. You just feel it. You just feel it. You're going to hire the most competent person. And I kept seeing, we hired these people who had these very obvious downsides and these very obvious weaknesses that I was like, why can't you just hire? Okay, for example, in email marketing, like we have an email marketing agency, right? And in my opinion, the role that is the most difficult to hire for is account manager, because the account manager is essentially somebody, we have 8 employees now, something like that. And the account manager is someone that's going to talk to your clients and then organize the deliverables and deliver a lot of the work and things like this. And the reason why it's so difficult to hire an account manager is because if you hire someone who's just a classic employee type, they're going to be, and obviously, oh, just hire an A player. And it's okay, cool. Let's talk about it, okay? So the problem with hiring, for example, an account manager is they need to be not super proactive, because then they're just going to start their own business after you teach them for 6 months to a year or whatever it might be, which it does happen, and you just got to eat it, in my opinion. It's just going to happen. There's no going around it. That person is going to learn everything about your business, how to get clients, how to deliver the work, and how to communicate. We're going to teach them everything. And it was my case. I was an account manager for 3-4 years, something like this. And then look at, I have my business now doing the exact same thing, but in like with the small differences with what I think, the way I like to run a business, let's say. So the account manager, it needs to be someone proactive, but not so proactive that they become an entrepreneur within a few months of you teaching them. But equally, it shouldn't be someone that's not proactive, because then they're just going to be doing the absolute bare minimum. And you have to keep reminding them to update the clients. And then there's going to be people with clear differences in skills, right? It's going to be, let me just walk you through my journey, for example, of hiring account managers. I don't know, I think we tried out like 10 or something like this. And at the beginning, I think what's inevitable is when you start your own business, at the beginning, you don't have money, right? Or like, let's just assume that you start from zero and you bootstrap, and you're not from Germany and you had parents who gave you 100K just so that you feel safe. So let's just assume you have zero money and you started an agency, right? You're gonna hire the cheapest possible people who's still gonna help you, right? So that means probably people from the Philippines or in India or something like this. Please, I just named these 2 countries because it's something that, it's just an example, okay? Just an example. It could be any other countries, could be Eastern Europe, could be anywhere from any other country. If you find that kind of people who, there's the arbitrage of what is good money in their country versus yours, and then maybe they are smart. So you hire them, and then what's again inevitably going to happen is when you hire people who don't charge you that much money to work, a lot of times they're just not going to be that good, okay? And then you will start to get angry at working with people you might call stupid, you might not. Again, up to you how you want to interpret this. I don't know. I just feel like I have to be really careful these days because of these getting cancelled, whatever, terms and conditions. So please, with all due respect, okay? So then you're going to be tired of working with stupid people. And then also equally, if you're good in the meantime, you're going to start making a little bit more money so that you can hire a little bit more skilled people. And then eventually, so then you try, I don't know, this was my journey, okay? I hate hiring. Hiring, it needs to, in a night, the people that hire the best, what I've seen is they have this total system. So they post on LinkedIn, they boost the post. I have so many friends who are like, I would say really, really high level business guys. And I've seen the things they do. I used to work for some of them. I work with some of them. And they post on LinkedIn, boost the post or make it basically LinkedIn ads. A lot of people right now, as of 2026, say, LinkedIn is the best place to hire. And this is remote work, right? And then there's Upwork, there's onlinejobs.ph for Philippines specific, where I had some decent experiences, by the way. Also on LinkedIn, but just in general, just the same thing with clients, like getting clients. Best way to get clients, referrals and networking. That's just where you're gonna get the highest quality clients, because you already have the trust. You don't have this bullshit, these things with, I don't know, weird people. You get it, and obviously it can still go wrong, and for example, I don't know, I just don't really like to work with people who are like too close to me, let's say, but people that you know, and yeah. So I've had some good experiences that way. My favorite employee ever, Mariana from our team, I met her working at another agency where we worked together, where she was a referral of someone that was already working there, because we realized we needed someone who's really good at pointing out other people's mistakes. So she's our QA, quality assurance. So she was like my first hire when I started the agency, and it was like, oh my God, so good. Total A player consistently, and it's just like a unicorn. And you're not gonna find that. It's just, if you find one of these, in my opinion, you need to do everything to keep them. That's my opinion. And when I used to be an employee, I think the reason why the stuff that I talk about can be interesting, or maybe a different angle, is because a lot of entrepreneurs who have a YouTube channel or something like this, they were always entrepreneurs. So they were like, I don't know, when Gary Vee selling baseball cards when he was 7 or whatever the fuck he was doing. I was not that. Yeah, I had a football blog website when I was 10 or something like this. But I was an employee for 5 years at an online marketing agency where we did email marketing. So I see it from both sides, like the founder's perspective and also the employee's perspective. And me as an employee back in the day, I was thinking like, I'm not that valuable. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm replaceable, because it's just, and I'm scared almost to start my own business, which is like what's keeping a lot of employees being employees, is like there's a lot of headache, which is true, by the way. I don't know, now after running this agency for 3-4 years now, I would say I spend 70% of my time not on the business, like not inside, like doing email marketing for clients, and it's like getting approved on Stripe and setting up the personal tax residency, and having affiliate partnerships and getting on partnership calls, and obviously like exploring new ways where we could do sales and like vibe coding with Cursor, like crazy, yeah, and to enrich leads and like finding compliments about different clients. So from the employee's perspective, it's like, it seems really big headache to start my own company, and it is. I mean, I still prefer it, but yeah, that's just like how some employees might be looking at it. So with that being the case, that's what some employees might think about. So that's it from the employee's perspective. It's like, I'm replaceable. Whereas from the founder's perspective, if you have, there are A players and there are some B players who are, it's pretty good. And unless you're on a super, super high level, in my opinion, it's really tough to build a team, especially if you have a big team that is only A players. It's just like it's a little bit like building a football team, by the way. Maybe I'm going to start making more football metaphors just because it's like my main passion. Soccer for the US viewers. So it's like, if you look at a team like Argentina, for example, at the World Cup, just super simple example, they have one insane player, Messi, and then just a bunch of players who support him. And he doesn't really do a lot of defensive work and things like that, but the other players just facilitate him. And I think a business can work in a very similar way, where I think it's good to have some competent people who might have some clear downsides or something like this. For example, we have an account manager who's good work ethic. He communicates professionally with the clients. He's from the US, which is just an upside with US clients. It's just how it is. And he's consistent when it comes to working with our processes. But he technically, in terms of his technical understanding of Klaviyo, is maybe not the highest level. And it might not ever be. It's just some people get it, some people don't. Whereas my first hire as an account manager was this guy from the UK who has a lot of experience. and he understood the technical stuff, and he was really good on, let's say, a sales call. When I was on the call with him, my impression was this guy knows what he's talking about. So I hired him. But the problem was, because his negative was just work ethic. He was just unreliable and lazy, and a lot of times he was just telling me like, oh yeah, I'll get that done. And then he never got that done. He was always like, I'm gonna do this today. And he never did it that day. And on no days, okay? So my first impression of hiring was, oh, you just hire the person who's the most qualified and with the most skills, which is, in my opinion, not the case at all. We had 2 super good experiments where, email marketing, in my opinion, for e-commerce, it can be taught to someone who's smart within a couple of months to a decent level. So what we tried out was hiring 2 people from our network who we knew were, first of all, good people and not going to be super entitled, for example. Or, for example, there are a bunch of different ways where employees can be shitty people, okay? So, for example, telling me you worked 120 hours this month, even though you worked 30. And did you work 120 hours? I don't think so. And this is something that not many people talk about. The amount of people who insanely inflate the amount of hours they work is crazy. And it's understandable, is that supply and demand, you just take your time when you work, or you just report higher numbers. So yeah, for example, that's another thing that was working with another person who was really competent, has a lot of years of experience. And then they just told me that they worked more than they actually did. And it was like super, I don't know, just like losing a lot of trust. And it was like not a good position. So then we hired someone else who seemed like a good person and like also skilled and seemed to have ticked a lot of the boxes. But then they just disappear after a week. Like they just work for a week and then they just not work anymore. And it happened like twice in a row. Even though for the second person, I told him specifically, hey, so just to like we went through the hiring process, and in my opinion, like you can do the tests, you can do the 3 stages of the calls, and it will limit the probability this happens, but it will never totally eliminate it. And yeah, like some of the best guys that I know who do hiring, they do, yeah, as I said, people say quantity is quality. So they do the LinkedIn ads, they do the boosted post on Upwork, they post on Facebook, they post everywhere. And then they just send people to this application form, usually with ClickUp, and then that puts them through some kind of a process, and then they can go through the applications and then filter them out and then send them the next one with a deadline, usually a very short deadline. Excuse me. Because you need people to work fast for you. So then the next stage is usually some kind of a interview, something along those lines, sometimes like 2 rounds of interviews. So that's the proper way. And yeah, I just had 2 people who just worked for 2 weeks and they seemed really qualified and all the rest of it. And they also watch Alex Hormozy and all the YouTube videos, and it seemed like we're on the same page, and they just disappear, which is crazy, without saying a word. After I told him specifically that this was something that happened before, and he agreed that that's really bad. Yeah, and something that I haven't mentioned this guy before. He's basically my internet father, Owen Cook. And something that I learned from him is when you have employees, you cannot just be like, okay, like you talk about what to do next and then they just do it. It's like, okay, is it clear what we have talked about? Please repeat it back to me. You're going to create a spam test for this client and you're going to create new pop-ups for this client with this different design. Repeat it after me. Okay, and then they repeat it back after me, usually incorrectly. Then, no, that's not correct. It's this. And then you're like, you set a deadline of like, when can this be done? And then you do this. And it's like having a child a little bit. And it's not because people are stupid, it's just how the dynamic works. It's just been my experience. And then, so the successful experiment that we made, I have this working theory, that if you hire people from your own country, like that's Hungary for me, that just usually gonna lead to better results. I have a friend of mine who used to work with, he has a SaaS company. He used to work with Indian devs, and then he's from Morocco. And the moment he switched to Moroccan people, he felt like, he said to me, like, he feels they respect him more, or there's this more personal connection. And that is something that remains to be seen, but just something that I noticed pretty consistently along. And yeah, we hired these two people who had zero experience with email marketing, but they were, in our, Marianne and in my opinion, smart. They were like a good person that you can have feedback to. That's another, oh my God, huge thing with hiring someone who's super competent. The problem with a lot of them is they cannot take feedback, because the moment you give them feedback, like, hey, I felt like on this call you were like nonchalant and you didn't really give a shit. And to the client, I understand why this is just your face or something like that. But just know, like, from the client's perspective, it seemed like you don't care. And then they're gonna push back. Oh, you said it. You said this and this, and it's, oh my God, like being able to take feedback and work together and like collaborate. And for example, like someone who used to be like on our team and was really, really competent, but was difficult to work with, because the moment someone gave them feedback, they're like, no, you're wrong. And it is just like, they didn't even consider the possibility they might be wrong. That's, for example, became way more important, because people can be taught a lot of these things. And because we hired these people who were like in a specific, it's almost like an opportunistic hire, where they were at a certain moment in life, which meant that they were really grateful for an opportunity. And that means that the dynamic is just going to be different. If they used to make 5K a month at this American company with benefits and pension and all of these things, and then or like they used to be a professional football player making 10K euros a month, and then you hire them as an account manager for much less, and you ask them to work really hard, that's not going to happen, or very rarely. What I found a lot of times is these like opportunistic hires of like people who are at a certain moment in life, who are smart, and we can teach them these things. Like, that's actually easier. In my opinion, it's easier to teach someone e-commerce, email marketing, than teaching them not being entitled, or consistency, or reliability, and like things like this. That has just been my quick rant about hiring, which has been easily the most difficult thing that I didn't expect to be this difficult in building a business. Let me know your thoughts. If you got this far in the video, thank you so much. And I'll see you in the next one. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all of these good things.